Hello, welcome everybody to our 2020 Champions for Democracy. So glad you're here at our first virtual event. It's a little different this year. We really appreciate you being here. And before the formal program gets going, we're gonna let people kind of get signed in. I wanted to just go over a few housekeeping procedures with you. All guests are automatically muted tonight, so feel free to have a rip-roaring good time as we all socially distance. You don't have to worry about your noise or anything like that. We've got you muted. If you have any questions or you have technical issues or any problems at all, feel free to use the chat. And I know we're all proficient at Zoom at this point, but right at the bottom of the screen, you've got a little chat bubble. And if you're having any technical difficulties, put it right in that box and we'll help to get you squared away. We hope that you will be inspired to give during tonight's awards. To do that, you can click the link that we'll be putting in the chat throughout the night, or you can get out your phone if you're not using it for your Zoom, and open up your camera, point it at that QR code that's in the middle of your screen right now, and that will take you directly to a donation page. So that should be one of the easiest ways to give tonight, is you can just use the QR code that is on your screen right now. So now is a great time to practice while we're waiting for everybody to get signed in. And I also wanted to thank our sponsors for the night. We are very, very grateful to all of the sponsors that are listed there on your screen. We could not have done an event like this or the work that we do throughout the year without their support. So thank you very much to all of our sponsors that joined us tonight. So again, as we get started, I very much appreciate you being here. I hope that you'll be moved by our program and give generously. I also want to thank everybody who participated in the wine grab. That is already sold out. So to everybody who participated in the wine grab, we're very grateful, and we will get an email out to you at the end of the program to coordinate picking up your wine. So I'm excited to see who won the John Elway bottle. So look for that email. That's going to come from Jay Rajagopal, and that should be in your inbox later tonight to coordinate getting your wine sometime in the next week or so. So speaking of wine, now is a great time to pour yourself a glass. It's going to be a wonderful program, and we're about to begin. So thank you for being here.
Democracy. It's not just some vague notion of freedom. It's the dangerous and revolutionary idea that the people should have power. Not kings or the ultra-wealthy, not robber barons or CEOs, but everyday people like you and me have the right to shape our own destinies. Democracy didn't come about by accident. It didn't fall in our laps. We had to fight for it. Over and over, we had to stand up to power and say that our government, our society, belongs to us. All of us. It took generations. War, strikes, protest, legislation. It took workers, women, and people of color standing up, standing together and saying, "We will be heard." But the work continues. Powerful interests will always want to hijack our democracy for their own purposes. There will be those who want us to stay home and stay quiet, who want to turn our democracy into a market for political goods, a back alley for kickbacks and giveaways, lobbyists and secret handshakes. This isn't about left versus right. It's about safeguarding all of our rights. It's about the right of every voter to cast a ballot, ensuring that our elections are fair and secure, getting money out of politics, strengthening our ethics laws, and making sure that no foreign power puts their finger on the scale. Together, we will lay the foundation for a stronger democracy for every American. Because it is our common right, our common cause.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If you're just now joining us, thank you again for being here. 2020 has made evident that our democratic systems are more important than ever. And we are thrilled that you care as much about defending our democracy as we all do. I know that you could be anywhere tonight, and I'm so grateful that you're spending your evening with Colorado Common Cause. For the last 4 years, Jeff Hart has served as the Colorado Common Cause Board Chair. A staunch advocate for campaign finance reform and voting rights, Jeff has spent hundreds of hours helping to move our pro-democracy agenda forward. I just wanted to take this moment to thank him for his last 4 years of service. And I also wanted to introduce you to our new board chair, Eunice Brownlee, who has some opening remarks to share with you.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you all for being here tonight. As Amanda said, I am Eunice Brownlee, and I am a whole week into my stint as being board chair for Colorado Common Cause, and I cannot think of a better way to kick off my new role than to celebrate those in our community who have helped us do the work that we do. For those of you who are new to Common Cause, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works to create open, honest, and accountable government that serves the public interest, promote equal rights, opportunity, and representation for all, and empower all people to make their voices heard in the political process. We're a membership-based organization, and so far, we're 22,000 members strong in Colorado. I invite you to help us make that number grow. I don't know about you, but for the last 6 months, every email, every social media post, every conversation I've had has mentioned how unprecedented these times are and how weird 2020 is. And we do find ourselves in a unique and perplexing year. I don't want to downplay how challenging this year is, but I want you to know that Colorado Common Cause is not new to hard work. For almost 50 years, we've been the lobby for the people. Democracy has been something we've had to fight for, and we have a history of winning. We passed the first open meetings law in the nation. When legislators didn't act, we went to the voters and passed some of the best campaign contribution limits in the country. We created an election system that is a model for the entire nation. Coloradans could vote from home long before an international pandemic forced us to consider that as an option. We know that the ultimate power of our democracy is in the people, and that's what today is about. It's about bringing people together to improve our democracy, our state, and our communities. We're raising funds for Colorado Common Cause to continue this work. Tonight, it's up to all of us to stand up for democracy. I hope you'll support our work for a representative, responsive government. I've served on the board for the past 2 years because, like Common Cause, Colorado Common Cause, I side with no one but the people. Working together, we are building a democracy that works for all of us. Tonight, we're lucky to have a national award-winning scholar and author with us to talk about the threats we're facing. Professor Nancy McLean's book, Democracy in Chains, is enlightening, enraging, and informative. Booklist called it perhaps the best explanation to date of the roots of the political divide that threatens to irrevocably alter American government. Professor McLean, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eunice, and great that you are the new board chair. Congratulations. Thank you so much for that nice introduction, and also thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be with you all tonight in sunny Denver rather than rainy North Carolina, my home. But I'm really happy to be here because I'm such a great fan of Common Cause and the vital work that you do. I actually believe so much in all you're fighting for that I give to the National Common Cause and my state Common Cause, which is doing, and they both do great work in different ways. But also, how could I say no to sharing a billing with Eric Holder and having the chance to hear more about his crucial efforts for fair and honest redistricting so that voters are able to choose their elected officials rather than letting elected officials choose their voters. So I'll cut right to the chase in my remarks. Common Cause is a leader, if not the leader, in championing the kind of structural democracy reforms that we must win and win in the next few years to save the American experiment in government by the people, as your video so beautifully illuminated, in a government where everyone's vote counts equally. You have worked over the years and are working now for essential reforms like independent redistricting to end gerrymandering, like making voting easier with same-day registration and safe with vote by mail, as you've won in Colorado, campaign finance reform to stop the rule of America by dark money and disinformation, protecting our constitutional rights and the independence of our courts, and so much more. In fact, my research for Democracy in Chains shows that your work is even more vital and more urgent than some of you may realize. Just today, in fact, I was on a webinar with a leading law professor on what he calls the coming election meltdown. The coming election meltdown. You're a nonprofit organization, so I won't mention the part of his title before the colon, but I'm sure you know what he's speaking of in this new book. And as I was listening, I was reminded of the introduction to Democracy in Chains, to a section of it that I'd like to share with you on this very point. Bear with me because this will be a few paragraphs, but I think they matter especially now because they were written before the current president took office. They capture the long game that has so warped our institutions that such a figure could be elected after the campaign we witnessed. And the passage reminds us also that, as a public health nurse who read the book and wrote to me said, I see now that this administration is the tumor, not the cancer. Doctors must operate on the tumor, but they have to get out the cancer that produced it, or they cannot save the patient. So here we go. As I said, a few paragraphs, but I think you may find them surprising since they were written several years before what we're facing now. In writing this book, I have found myself more and more fixated on one gnawing question. Is what we are dealing with merely a social movement of the right whose radical ideas must eventually face public scrutiny and rise or fall on their merits? Or is this the story of something quite different, something never seen before in American history? Could it be, and I use these words quite hesitantly and carefully, a fifth column assault on American democratic governance? For a movement that knows it can never win majority support for its real ideas is not a classic social movement. Throughout our history, America has been changed, mostly for the better, by social movements, some of them quite radical, the abolition movement above all. Our national experience over the past 2.5 centuries has demonstrated time and again that the citizenry can learn and grow from social movements, sifting through their claims to adopt and reject as we see fit. Where movements win over majorities, they make headway. When they fail to, in time, they falter. This cause is different. pushed by a relatively small number of radical right billionaires and millionaires who have become profoundly hostile to America's modern system of government, an apparatus decades in the making, funded by these same billionaires and millionaires, has been working to undo the normal governance of our democracy. In fact, one of their manifestos calls for, and I quote, a hostile takeover of Washington, D.C. That hostile takeover operates very much like a fifth column, operating in a highly calculated fashion, more akin to an occupying force than to an open group involved in the usual give and take and compromise of politics. The size of this force is enormous. The social scientists who have led scholars in researching the Koch network write that it, quote, operates on the scale of a national US political party and employs more than 3 times as many people as the Republican committees had on their payrolls in 2015. This points to another characteristic associated with a fifth column: the tactic of overwhelming the normal political process with schemes to disrupt its functioning. Indeed, this massive and well-funded force is turning the party it has occupied toward ends that most Republican voters do not want, such as the privatization of Social Security, Medicare, and education. To that, we could add the privatization of the Veterans Administration, the Postal Service, the national parks, and more. So, how do you push through a policy agenda that even the voters whose support you're counting on don't actually want? Well, you do it in a very sophisticated, integrated manner over decades, in fact. First, you gather donors to fund a vast integrated apparatus. That apparatus now includes hundreds of organizations. They include national groups like the Cato Institute and the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, Americans for Prosperity, the American Legislative Exchange Council, the State Policy Network. I could go on, but I won't. They also include some 5 groups in Colorado, including the Independence Institute and the Mountain States Legal Foundation. You also, if you're trying to affect that kind of policy change, better invest in ideas and new pipelines for talent. So now the Koch network has invested in over 300 campuses with growing centers at many, including the largest at George Mason University that I wrote about, which works hand in glove with the Scalia School of Law there to transform the courts. Then you can use those organizations to win court decisions like Citizens United, Shelby County, and Janus, and more. And with that kind of power and all those organizations and those boots on the ground through groups like Americans for Prosperity, you can bend elected officials to your purposes with the threat of primary challenges against them and the reward of dark money cash if they carry out your agenda. Then, to make sure that the voters don't get in the way of this, you can invest in the most radical and sophisticated gerrymander in American political history, something like Project Red Map of 2010 that made the relationship between voters' preferences and representation just essentially severed it for all intents and purposes in some places. Then you can also pass laws to break up the collective power of your opponents, particularly unions and particularly public sector unions and teachers unions, which are the largest unions in today's America. Then, of course, you can also pass voter suppression and all the rest. So in a sense, you can rig the rules of the political game so that heads you win, tails the rest of us lose. In other words, so that you can get your agenda, whether or not it's popular. But here's the good news. This project, this radical right project, that in the end is really being strategically designed by a very tiny minority of arch libertarians, this project can only succeed if we fail to inform and activate the American people. If we inform the American people of why democracy is struggling so much today, and if we involve people at the grassroots all around the country, whatever their are, whatever they can bring to the table, because we all have something. If we involve the people in fighting for the kind of democracy reform we need, that project that I just described, that fifth column assault on democratic governance, cannot succeed. So with that, let me turn the mic, as it were, back to Amanda Gonzalez to talk to you about how you can help. Because the work that you're doing now and the work that many of you will be joining over the next few months, perhaps, is really the most vital work that we can do for the future, for our children, for our grandchildren, and for our very planet, as we see in California. Because the cause that I have just described is heavily based in the fossil fuel sector, and determined to make sure that we do not take action on the climate. To stop that, they are willing to break down democracy in America. So thank you, Common Cause, for all you do, and I look forward to hearing the other speakers this evening.
Thank you so much, Professor McLean, for being here tonight, for sharing your scholarship. As our speaker pointed out, we have a lot of work ahead of us, a vast integrated apparatus. There is no reason that the people can't be that. There are so many more of us than there are of them, right? That is what democracy is for. It's for all of us. Colorado Common Cause is a membership-based organization, and we could not do this work without supporters like you. In the last year, your support has allowed us to ramp up our election protection work. In coalition with a number of organizations, we are going to train more than 100 attorneys this year in English and Spanish to answer a hotline and be ready at a call center to ensure that every voter is able to cast their vote and have that vote accurately counted. Anyone who experiences voter suppression, we are here to help and make sure that they are able to cast their ballot. In past years, more than 60,000 voters have visited our Just Vote website, texted, or called us. And that's not all that we do for voters. In 2019, we helped pass a bill that re-enfranchises people who are on parole in Colorado. For the first time, this presidential election, everyone who is in our community, whether you're on parole or on probation, it doesn't matter if you've had a felony conviction in your past, you're able to vote in Colorado's election. That's 10,000 new voters because of people like you who joined organizations like Common Cause to make sure that our agenda is the one that prevails at our state capitol. And last legislation, we ended prison gerrymandering. People who are serving a sentence of confinement will now be counted in the political district where they live instead of where they're serving time. So thank you so much to tonight's sponsors who have already donated. There's a QR code up on your screen, and I hope that you'll donate to support this work so that we can continue moving our pro-democracy agenda ahead. We couldn't do it without members like you. We also couldn't do it without tonight's first awardee. I'm so thrilled that Representative James Coleman is able to join us tonight. I mentioned that we helped pass a bill that ended prison gerrymandering, and Representative Coleman was the bill sponsor on that legislation. The way the Census Bureau counts people in prison creates significant problems for our democracy and for our nation's future. It leads to dramatic distortion of representation at local and state levels and creates inaccurate pictures of our community and our population. Thanks to Representative Coleman, that is no longer the case in Colorado. Because of his advocacy, we will have fairer districts in 2021. Rep. Coleman grew up in Denver. He currently represents the 7th District, which covers Green Valley Ranch. He's a tireless advocate for voting rights in his community, and we're so grateful to have him here tonight. Representative Coleman, thank you very much for being one of our 2020 Champions for Democracy.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with all of you. And just I'd like to say good evening to everybody. Definitely want to make sure I thank Amanda Gonzalez and the Colorado Common Cause team for this 2020 Champion for Democracy Award. You all do the work, and of course, are the true champions, and we get the credit for it. Couldn't do this work without you. And Amanda, I think I speak for everyone when I say that we have the greatest Common Cause executive director across the nation in you, right here in Colorado. And so I'm just excited to join Colorado Common Cause and our collective effort to end gerrymandering with Colorado's first independent redistricting commissions. Currently, about 19,000 individuals are incarcerated in public prisons in Colorado, but they're counted for redistricting purposes as if their cell is their residence. We all know this is prison gerrymandering. And, you know, I think the Federal Census Bureau is the only governmental agency that considers prisons a residence. And 99.97% of tens of thousands of public comments oppose this practice. And along with my co-prime sponsors, Representative Carrie Tipper in HC 28, Senator Julie Gonzalez in ST 34, Senator Carrie Donovan in ST 5, and Senator Foote and our colleagues helped to pass House Bill 2010 and the Colorado Accurate Residence for Redistricting Act, which ultimately reallocates incarcerated individuals in state prisons back to their last known residence so that they are counted at their last known address for redistricting purposes only. This bill aligned with Colorado's redistricting process. It precludes changing an individual's residence simply because they're incarcerated. So, you know, that's the bill, that's what it does. We're glad to see it enforced. You know, Colorado Common Cause was an early endorser of this bill, and with their help, we were also proud to have our bill endorsed by the Colorado Political Action, the NAACP, the Brennan Center for Justice, America Votes, League of Women Voters of Colorado, One Colorado, the Campaign Legal Center, ACLU Colorado, Colorado Organization for Latina Opportunity and Reproductive Rights, otherwise known as COLOR, and the Colorado Center on Law and Policy. So just to name a few. Thank you, Amanda. Again, your amazing team at Colorado Common Cause and all our supporters and colleagues who got this bill passed, signed by Governor Jared Polis, and enforced especially in this critical election year. And I just can't wait and look forward to doing more impactful work with you all in the future. You know, I stopped by the office really quickly today to pick this up so that I could have it here on screen. I didn't get it out because, of course, I wasn't responsible enough to do that. And here it is. So thank you so much for this award. Really appreciative of it. Can't wait to do more work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you again, Representative Coleman, for your hard work and commitment to fair representation. I'm Sue Catterall. Good evening. I'm Vice Chair of Colorado Common Cause Board, and I am thrilled to present our 2020 Champions for Democracy Award to Senator Mike Foote. Senator Foote has served in the Colorado legislature since 2013. In addition to fighting for responsible campaign finance, he was the sponsor of Senate Bill 19-42, National Popular Vote. Living in a democracy should mean one person, one vote, and everyone's vote should count equally, no matter where they live. Thanks to Senator Foote's leadership, the National Popular Vote Bill was signed into law in 2019. Now that Colorado voters will be asked to vote on the matter in November, he continues to champion the cause as an ardent supporter of Yes on 113 campaign. Thank you, Senator Foote, for being a champion for our democracy.
Okay, so thank you, Sue. Thank you, Amanda. Thanks, everybody from Common Cause. I really appreciate your award here and recognition, but mostly I appreciate your work. Having been in the legislature for 8 years, I'm on my way out now. This was my last session, but during the 8 years I was in the legislature, I was on the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee all 8 years. And we do a lot of stuff, but one of the interesting things that we do is deal with election laws and Secretary of State's office and those types of issues. And I know that the Common Cause organization and their spokespeople were always there to testify on behalf of really good bills that promote democracy and also against really bad bills that were designed to suppress the vote or against democracy. And we had our fair share of both. Fortunately, I think we passed a lot more good bills than bad. We killed most of the bad bills in our State Affairs Committee, I like to think. And so I really appreciate Common Cause's work on behalf of doing that, and also your work in running some of those good bills. The bill that Representative Coleman just talked about was an excellent bill, and it would not have crossed the finish line without Common Cause's work. So the bill that you mentioned was the National Popular Vote bill, and I was very, very pleased and honored to run that bill in 2019 in the Senate. And of course, we had Representatives Arndt and Sirota run it in the House, and Representative Coleman was an ardent supporter there and continues to be. So of course, we appreciate his support. And the reason why I was so passionate about running that bill is because I think that the national popular vote is really the most important way and the most effective way to effectuate reform on the state level, especially when it comes to selecting our president. Selecting our president in the United States Constitution is a state-based exercise. And we, when we pass the National Popular Vote bill, take full advantage of that constitutional authority to make sure that we here in Colorado, among other states, elect our president in the same way that we elect every other elected official, which is by one person, one vote. And by the principle that the candidate that gets the most popular votes actually wins. And everybody else is elected that way. I know I was elected that way. James Coleman was elected that way. But our president is not elected that way. And that needs to change. It leads to all kinds of bad effects, I think, for our democracy. And I really look at it as an extension of our 230-year-long struggle to make sure that everybody has a voice and that all votes are equal. Of course, when we first started, way back in the day when the Constitution first came about, it was really just one white landowner's voice equals one vote. And over the course of time and a lot of struggle, that expanded to women's votes, to the civil rights movement. And I really look at the national popular vote as being part of that type of movement, and making sure that we expand everybody's voices and that voices are effectively heard, no matter where that voter lives and no matter what the election is. Right now, unfortunately, in the presidential election, only if you vote in the majority in a given state does your vote count. So if you happen to vote for the Republican in blue state Illinois or the Democrat in red state Mississippi, your vote is tossed aside, and that's an injustice. That's disenfranchisement. That's wrong. We need to make sure that everybody's vote matters, and when everybody's vote matters and they know it, voter participation will go up, and that's another important byproduct of the national popular vote. So I know that, of course, I know that the national popular vote and the Common Cause mission are very well aligned. The Common Cause has been a huge supporter of the national popular vote and also yes on Proposition 113 because of that. So I hope that everyone on this call will, of course, consider voting yes on 113 this time around to make sure that we keep the national popular vote law within the law of the state of Colorado. So I also did manage to get my award ahead of time. It was brought to me actually at my house, and I really appreciate that. So here it is, and I will display it with pride, of course. And I will remember my time and interaction with Common Cause fondly, because you are truly an organization that stands up for what you believe in and is a strong voice in Colorado at the Capitol and elsewhere to make sure that we have a stronger democracy in the face of the threats that we have. With the national popular vote, there's plenty of pushback against it because there's lots of people that like the system the way it is. But most voters around the country don't like it the way it is, and many voters aren't heard. We need to change that, which is why we need to continue to make those positive steps on the national popular vote and other reforms. So thank you very much again for your work. Thank you for the award. And I am going to shut up now and turn it back over to you all. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Senator Foote. Thank you for being here and for all of your hard work ensuring that we all have an equal voice in our democracy. One of the other ways in which we all need to be part of the system is to be counted on the census. The census count is ongoing through the end of September. I hope you have all filled it out and told all of your friends and family that they should do the same.
I count.
I count.
I count. What are we celebrating? The Census 2020, an important time for you and your community.
Every 10 years, the census counts all residents, no matter who you are, where you live, or where you're from.
The census count tells our government what we need in our neighborhoods, like a new road, a new school, or a hospital.
For every person that fills out a survey, our state receives funding.
That is why your local leaders need you to count yourself in.
You
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jennifer Parenti, and I'm on the staff here at Colorado Common Cause. I'm one of our organizers. I work in the Northern Colorado region exclusively, and I'm very happy to be here tonight to introduce our next award winner. If you'll just give me one moment to get the slides back up and running. There we go. When John Gardner founded Common Cause in 1970, he envisioned creating a people's lobby, someone to fight for the rights of ordinary citizens in our democracy. But we aren't an organization just for the people, but of the people. And we rely on an amazing team of volunteers from throughout the state to be our eyes and ears and voices in their communities. As an organizer with Common Cause, working with our volunteers has been the most rewarding aspect of my job. And that's one of the many reasons that we wanted to take a few moments to recognize and honor our many volunteers who help make our work a success throughout the year. Over the past year, our volunteers have dedicated countless hours ensuring their most vulnerable neighbors were counted. Our volunteers helped us conduct outreach to over 34,000 hard-to-count households throughout Colorado. They also stood side by side with us while we rallied to protect our system of checks and balances and stood up against abuses of power. They helped celebrate our progress and helped us highlight the work that still remains. From protecting our elections to reducing money's influence and expanding voting rights, Colorado Common Cause is very fortunate and grateful to have such a dedicated team of volunteers and partner organizations. So this year, we wanted to not just acknowledge, but celebrate and honor their contributions to Common Cause's efforts. So our next Champion of Democracy Award will be presented to one of our partner organizations who has been an incredible source of inspiration and volunteer actions over the past year, the League of Women Voters of Larimer County. Over the past year, our friends at the League have redefined the meaning of allyship in Northern Colorado. We have worked together on presidential impeachment, on rallying regional support for the national popular vote, collaborating on local campaign finance reforms, and ultimately put together the largest network of census volunteers in our state. At its height, the League was helping us organize nearly 50 volunteers in the Loveland-Fort Collins area. Through these and many efforts, they have made a very real and lasting impact on the strength of our democracy in Northern Colorado. So here today, I'm very proud to present accepting this award on their behalf, one of their extraordinary volunteers, and I might add a longtime supporter of Common Cause, and my good friend, Janet Schultz.
Thank you very much, Jen, for that great introduction and also talking about your great volunteers. And again, on behalf of the entire membership of the League of Women Voters of Larimer County, thank you, Colorado Common Cause, for this just absolutely wonderful recognition. I too was happy enough to have this delivered to my home. It's a beautiful award, and Jen, thanks for driving it up. So our Larimer County chapter has nearly 300 members and supports 15 different teams that investigate and advocate for issues as diverse as affordable housing, to environmental action. Our chapter was founded in 1957, and our league's motto is making democracy work. As you might be aware, the National League of Women Voters marked its 100th anniversary this March, and in August, the country celebrated the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. So this recognition by Common Cause is especially meaningful for us as a chapter because one of our goals this past year was to work inclusively with diverse groups of common purpose to foster effective advocacy while still adhering to our nonpartisan standards. Thus, when Common Cause approached our chapter early this year asking if we could assist their efforts in promoting the 2020 census, we were eager to help and delighted to work with Jen Parenti. She's been a great addition to our organization as an ally. As she mentioned, over 50 different Larimer County League members over the course of 4 months stepped up to handwrite, stamp, and address nearly 2,200 postcards, encouraging hard to reach populations to complete the census. In addition to our census advocacy, we're also proud to quickly highlight tonight 3 other examples of successful collaboration and grassroots democracy in action achieved by our chapter this year. First, the election reform team under the very able leadership of Kathleen Schmidt joined forces with Robbie Moreland of Represent Fort Collins, and as a team successfully persuaded the Fort Collins City Council to approve several significant campaign finance reforms, which I know will make the folks at Common Cause very happy. For the first time ever in Fort Collins, LLCs will not be considered an individual entity and will be constrained to within an individual's donation limits. This accomplishment is a huge win for campaign funding transparency, for fairness, and of course for collaborating with allies. Second, in partnership with Yes on National Popular Vote and the League of Women Voters of Colorado, the election reform team sponsored 3 forums on National Popular Vote, one featuring our fellow awardee who has already spoken, Senator Mike Foote, and one featuring his co-sponsor, Representative Jenny Arndt. And we echo his plea that if you are a registered voter here in Colorado, to please vote yes on Proposition 113 come November. And then finally, we want to mention extraordinary efforts of one of our members, Linda Thomas, who oversees our voter registration program. Under her oversight, 75 league volunteers were trained and then registered over 1,500 young voters by working with teachers and administrators in 23 Larimer County high schools and colleges. We all know that increasing voting among young people will be a critical component of strengthening our democracy, and we wouldn't have been able to accomplish this without Linda's amazing energy and efforts. Again, the League of Women Voters of Larimer County is so incredibly honored to have received this recognition, and we want to thank Colorado Common Cause for the recognition. Thank you, Jen, too.
Thank you so much, Janet and the League of Women Voters of Larimer County for all of your hard work. And thank you to everyone who has made our work possible by supporting us as volunteers. We are all in this together. Almost all of the work that Colorado Common Cause does is in collaboration with volunteers and organizations. None of us can do this alone. So again, I want to thank tonight's sponsors for making this evening possible. And if you haven't given tonight, it is a wonderful, wonderful time to do that. The link is in the chat. I think we'll have a QR code up for you here shortly. In a few moments, you'll be hearing about the importance of fair maps and the 2021 redistricting process. At Colorado Common Cause, we helped to draft and pass Amendments Y and Z in 2018. None of this work is work that gets done in just days or weeks. We're in it for the long haul. For the first time, regular Coloradans, not politicians or political elites, will be drawing our maps in the next year. But those maps are only going to be as good and as fair as the people who draw them. And if you've ever tried recruiting volunteers or job applicants, you know that getting a good applicant pool doesn't just magically happen, right? It takes a lot of work. We want the redistricting commissions to reflect Colorado's diversity. And we've set a goal of recruiting 1,000 people to try and draw fair maps and end gerrymandering in Colorado. Your contributions tonight help us with that work. And thank you all for your commitments to fair districts and ending gerrymandering. Here to introduce our final keynote speaker is Colorado Common Cause board member, Olivia Mendoza.
Hi, well, thank you so much, Amanda, for introducing me, and I agree. The work that lies ahead of us, it takes a whole team and a lot of volunteers and a lot of great people. And to that end, I feel very honored to be here as a Common Cause board member and also as the Colorado State Director for All on the Line to introduce Attorney General Eric Holder. He serves as the chairman of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, and Attorney General Holder is an internationally recognized leader on a broad range of legal issues and has been a staunch advocate for civil rights. He served in the Obama administration as the 82nd Attorney General of the United States from February of 2009 to April of 2015, the third longest serving Attorney General in US history and the first African American to hold that office. As Attorney General, he worked to strengthen our democracy, protect our voting rights, and fight for the most marginalized across this country. And he continues that fight tonight. I am very honored to introduce Attorney General Holder, a man who inspires me every day for his commitment to our democracy and for just being a wonderful and honorable person. Attorney General Holder.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Olivia, for that kind introduction, and thank you all for the work that you're doing to lead Colorado to a better place. I wish we could all be together in person, but it's still wonderful to see all of you virtually this evening. I hope that everybody and all your families, your loved ones are staying safe and healthy. There is right now a lot going on in our country, and there are a lot of reasons, I think, to feel despair or to be upset about where we are. And I understand that. We're at an inflection point as a nation, the likes of which we have not seen very often. We're in the midst of a pandemic, another economic crisis, and we are once again having a national conversation about the ways in which we fail to live up to the promise of a just and equal society. You put on top of those overlapping crises, and we're in the midst of what I think is the most consequential election in my lifetime. Now, that's a lot. Now, I get that many people are feeling frustrated or feeling some degree of despair over the state of the country. I mean, I understand that inclination. A lot of days, I feel it myself. But I also think that we should feel a little hope right now. We have over the next few months and certainly over the next couple of years, an opportunity to reshape Colorado as well as this nation. We can, through the work that you all are doing, renew our democracy over the next couple of years and to make it more representative and more just. But that better future does not become a reality on its own. Now, I currently serve, as you've heard, as the chairman of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, a project that I started with President Obama after we left office to make sure that we, collectively, do not lose sight of the important redistricting process that will take place next year. Now, gerrymandering, the process of manipulating electoral lines to benefit one party, has wreaked havoc on our democracy over the past decade. It's been something that has troubled this nation almost since its inception. Now, it is just a fact, I'm not being partisan here, it's just a fact that Republicans had control over the redistricting process in more states in 2011, and they went about using new technology to create the greatest possible partisan advantage. A study conducted by the Associated Press found that in 2018, a blue wave, Republican gerrymandering prevented Democrats from winning 16 additional seats in the United States House of Representatives and flipping an additional 7 state legislative chambers. That is, to put it kindly, not how democracy is supposed to work. But the effects of gerrymandering last well beyond Election Day. When politicians represent gerrymandered districts, they are more concerned with a primary challenge than a general election. That changes the incentive structure for a politician. Now they're going to cater to the extremes of their base instead of the majority of the people who live in their district. It also means that they're free to do the bidding of special interest donors that already have an outsized influence in our electoral system. Gerrymandering exacerbates the gridlock and the hyperpartisanship that are pulling our politicians further apart. and the American people are continually frustrated by a political system that fails to work together on behalf of their best interests. It feels like an endless cycle that we can't remove ourselves from. This nation cannot endure another decade of gerrymandering. That is why I was so proud to travel to Colorado in 2018 to voice my support for Amendments Y and Z. You have followed the model set forth by states like Arizona and California that have found a better way to redistrict. You've taken away the power to draw the lines from self-interested politicians and given it to the people where it belongs. And that's all that I'm looking for with redistricting, a fair fight, one that allows the people to choose their elected officials instead of the other way around. Amendments Y and Z create a fair process to draw the maps, but now it's up to all of you to make fair maps a reality. I understand that applications to serve on the commission are now open, so please, please sign up, get involved. Make sure the people of your community, no matter where you live in Colorado, have a voice during the redistricting process. That's how it should be. Our government, our elections should be decided by the people, not by who had the pen the last time maps were redrawn. Now, it's true that I'm a Democrat, but I do not support democratic gerrymandering. I'm confident that with fair maps, with fair elections, if we have a combat of ideas between the two parties, Democrats will do just fine. So I'm committed to ensuring that we have fair lines across the country when new maps are drawn next year. You have taken a number of important steps to protect democracy in Colorado over the past decade or so. You've ended prison gerrymandering, created new independent redistricting commissions, and you've expanded access to the ballot. In a lot of ways, you are a model for the good government reforms that we need to see in states around the country to ensure that our politics match the spirit of our people. And that's why I believe what is at stake in the election this year and in the redistricting process that will follow is so consequential. We need to decide who we are as a nation, what kind of country we, the people, want to live in. We have in our capacity as citizens the ability to bring about great change in America. If there is one silver lining to this, I would call dark administration, it is the civic awakening that has occurred among the people of this nation. I think of the women who took to the streets in record numbers in January of 2017, the scientists who followed them a couple of months later, the teachers who stood up to budget cuts that would have hurt their students, the kids who marched for their lives in the fight for more sane gun laws, and more recently, the coalition of Black, white, and brown Americans who are marching for a more just and equitable society. It is my hope that the renewal of American engagement is not a moment, but a movement, a sustained movement that will bring about necessary reforms and renew our representative democracy. And that is what our country needs right now. So many of the problems that we face as a nation were not created overnight, and they will not be solved by one election. We truly are in a fight for the essence of this nation, and it's going to take a while, and it's going to take a lot of committed Americans to win this battle. But I think about the outcome if we are successful. Think about the outcome if we are successful here in Colorado and around the country. We could improve access to healthcare and protect the environment. We could stand up for working families and safeguard civil rights. We could expand and protect voting rights in more states around the country, just like you have done here in Colorado. We could build a better country, a stronger democracy, and a more perfect union for everyone who calls America home. And we could feel the weight of anxiety that we have all carried around with us over the last few years, feel that anxiety begin to melt away. Now, as all of you know, this is no time to sit on the sidelines. This is an all hands on deck moment for the people who care most about our democracy. The job before us will require some effort, and it will require sacrifice from everyone who wants to build back a better, more inclusive country. And that is what our country requires of us. It is up to each of us to exercise the full measure of our citizenship. It's up to every one of us with the power to stand up and speak out, to donate, to make calls, to encourage people to vote, and to cast a ballot that echoes with the voices of all those who have fought to make its promise real. This country is at its best when we bring more people into the democratic process, when more people have a seat at the table. So thank you. I sincerely thank you for all the work that you have done in Colorado to make real the promise of our democracy. I look forward to working with Common Cause in the fights that we'll face in the months and years to come. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Holder. We are very grateful for your leadership, your advocacy, and for you joining us tonight. I know that this year has been overwhelming. Believe me, I miss getting casual wine with my girlfriends. But I also know that the power of all of us is stronger than anything that we're up against. And that has always been the case, right? As MLK said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. If you believe in the power of people coming together, if you believe that everyday Coloradans having a voice in the policies that affect them will make our democracy stronger, then I hope that you'll make a donation tonight. We've never conducted a presidential election during a pandemic, but Colorado Common Cause has spent 50 years protecting the vote. We have solutions to uphold all of our rights, and we're confident that our state is up for the challenge. This isn't short-term work. We started working on mail-in ballots over a decade ago. To be truly of, by, and for the people, government must reflect everyone it serves. And we are all better off when people from all walks of life participate in self-governments. You know, I understand that this has been a rough year, but I hope that we are all just as committed as we always have been, if not more so, to meeting the problems that we all face, right? I understand that maybe ending gerrymandering or voting rights aren't your core issues, but I assure you that none of the problems we face, climate change, mass incarceration, affordable healthcare and education, can be tackled without sound democratic systems. The vote this November could be one of the most important in history. The lines that our independent redistricting commissions will draw will determine power for the next decade. We have to work together to build a democracy that works for all of us. And I hope that all of you will join me in that mission by scanning the little QR code that's on your screen right now, joining us in this movement. We need your funds to do the work that we do, and we also need your people power. So I encourage you to volunteer with Colorado Common Cause, whether that's phone banking or text banking or volunteering with our election protection work. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I want to thank our staff, Jennifer and Jay, for planning this event, for the board for your continued support, and for all of you for keeping up this fight. Never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you for being those concerned citizens. We are all in this together. I appreciate you. I hope that you give tonight and join us at an event in the very near future. Thank you all for being here.